Bonjour les élèves. These notes are going to talk about the imparfait, which is another way to talk about the past. In French, as in English, different tenses are used to talk about what happened in the past. The most common past tense, the one we've learned and used all year long, is the passé composé, and another one, the one we're going to learn right now, is the imparfait. So let's take a look at a couple examples of sentences that use the imparfait. In the first one, où est-ce que tu habitais avant? This would translate as to where were you living before? Or the second one, nous finissons nos devoirs. We were finishing our homework. Or the third one, quand j'étais jeune, j'ai voyagé en Floride. When I was young, I traveled to Florida. So later we'll talk about the differences for when to use the passé composé as opposed to the imparfait. But for right now, let's just take a look at how to form the imparfait. The imperfect tense is a simple tense, which means when you take any verb and you put it into the imparfait, it's just one word, unlike the passé composé, which has a helping verb and a past participle. For the imparfait, in order to form the imparfait, you would need the imperfect stem, and attached to that, a special ending, which is the imperfect ending. I'll show you in a minute how to form that imperfect stem and what those imperfect endings are. But those are the two components that make up the imparfait. So, in order to form the stem for every single verb, with the only exception being the verb être, to form the imparfait, the stem, you take the new form of the present tense minus the ONS. So if you take a look at the verb parler, for example, when you put that into the new form in the present tense, it looks like this, nous parlons. This is what we'll use to form the verb in the imparfait. We will take the ONS off, and this right here is what we have as our imperfect stem. It happens like that for any verb whatsoever. So like, for example, the verb prendre. To form the imperfect stem, we have to know what the new form of prendre is in the present tense, which is nous prenons. So to form the imperfect stem, we take the present tense new form minus the ONS, and that is our imperfect stem. The reason why the verb être is the only exception is because être is the only verb in the entire French language that doesn't have an ONS in the new form. If you remember, the new form of être is some, and there's not an ONS to take off. So we'll talk about how to form être in the imparfait a little bit later. Okay, but for right now, let's look at those imperfect endings. Alright, so the je ending, let me change my color here. If you have the subject je, you're going to attach a, I, s, pronounced e, to the end of the stem. The tu ending is exactly the same. E, I, I, or a, I, s. The il and l form, also pronounced e, but is a, I, t. The new form, e, o, n, s. The vous form, I, z, and the il and l plural form, a, I, and te. And I might like to point out to you that all of these endings sound the same except for the nu and the vous form. So they all are pronounced e, except for ion and ie. So let's take a look at the verb finir as an example, and let's put the verb finir into the imperfect. So the first thing that we need to know is how to form finir in the present tense new form. So if you remember, for IR verbs, your endings are I, S, S, O, and S. We take off the O and S, and the imperfect stem is what we have left over, and so that's finis. Then you would add on the imperfect endings. So to say I was finishing, je finissais. To say you were finishing, tu finissais. To say he was finishing, il finissait. To say we were finishing, nous finissions is how you would put that in the new form. You all were finishing, nous finissiez. And they were finishing, ils finissaient. So that's the verb finir in the imparfait. Let's take a look at an RE verb. Let's take the verb vendre and put this in the imparfait. So in order to do this, we have to know how to conjugate vendre in the present tense new form. Nous vendons. Take off that ONS. Your imperfect stem is vend. So to say I was selling, je vendais. You were selling would be exactly the same thing, tu vendais. He was selling would sound the same, il vendait. We would just spell it with a T on the end. We were selling, nous vendions. Vous vendiez. And il or elle vendait for the il and elle plural form. Alright, so let's take a look at the verb être and the reason why the verb être is an irregular verb. The verb être uses the stem e. So it's an e accent aigu and the letter T. That is the stem that will be present in all of the forms of être. And then you just simply add the imperfect endings. So to say I was would be j'étais. You've seen that on your vocab list. To say you were, tu étais. He was, il était. We were, nous étions. So you take that et stem and add the EONS ending. Vous étiez, for you all were, and ils étaient. So that is the only verb in the entire French language that is irregular for the imparfait. All the other verbs to form the imparfait, you just take the present tense new form minus the ONS and then add the imperfect endings for the necessary subject. So let's take one quick second and look at the meaning of the imparfait. There are 3 actual English translations that equate to the imparfait. So if you look at the sentence, nous allions au bord de la mer, it could be translated as we were going to the beach, because often the imparfait is was or were and then a verb in the ing. Or we used to go to the beach. The imparfait is used when you talk about things that you used to do all the time. Or it could be we would go, like in certain conditions we would do that. Okay guys, so that is the imparfait, much simpler than the passé composé that we learned earlier this year. Au revoir les élèves.